Welcome to the show. It's UAP Troop 33. I'm John. I'm your host. You guys ready, man? Are you ready? I don't think you're ready for this one. I really don't think you're ready for this one. What if I told you that based on our senses, we only see a very narrow band of the light spectrum? We only hear a very small amount of the vibratory sounds with our ears. What if I told you that there is a vast universe is humming with frequencies that we can't even perceive? And yet you have these mainstream scientists and stuff that act like they got it all figured out, you know? Well, today we're going to dive into this reality, this limited perception that we have. And not only that, but it's going to have to do with time itself, the limitations of these flesh and blood bodies and this three-dimensional experience. And I believe that this coincides with disclosure. And it's part of the reason why they don't want to disclose because I believe this information that I'm going to give you today is dangerous to the status quo. It's dangerous to the people in power. That's my opinion. So stay tuned. If I told you that the world you see, hear, and touch is only a shadow, faint echo of something far more vast, more mysterious, what would you say? Well, tonight we're going on that journey. We're going to dive deep into this. And I think that we're on the verge of, like when Chris Bledsoe said to Ross Coulthart, there's a door there. And that door's cracked. And we have a chance to go through that door. And I know that was cryptic and a lot of people didn't understand what he was saying, but tonight I'm going to tell you what I believe he was referring to. And I think we're very close. And I think this explains the whole, the paradox why we don't see aliens, in space. Why how come SETI can't detect life on other planets in the universe? I think this explains it, you know, and it has to do with 3D reality, right? The limitations of our bodies, the limitations of our minds. We're trapped in these flesh and blood bodies in this 3D reality with a very limited ability to experience what's really going on around us. If I told you that I think UAPs aren't necessarily from Zeta Reticuli, but they're from the vast part of the reality that we are blocked away from, that we cannot experience because of our senses, and that we move at a much slower pace. We're like snails to them. We like we operate at between 10 to 100 hertz, right? That means we can only handle like a handful of thoughts and ideas at a time, right? Functions, processes in our mind. And you compare that to a computer of today's power that, handles gigahertz, right? Can do billions of operations in a moment's time, right? What if we could somehow step out of this 3D reality, step out of this flesh and blood, this slow functioning body, so to speak, right? If you could enter into a reality like that, and I believe we're moving towards that, and I believe we're very, very close. And I think that they know we're very, very close. I think that it's possible that they have already may possibly cracked it, But if not, I believe we're very close. And I know this gets into the, the idea of the singularity. And for those of you who don't know what the singularity is, it's basically, when human consciousness merges with computers, supercomputers, so to speak, and we start to um, have full control over our environment and the universe as a whole. Because if everything is just information, right? If our reality is just information, what does that tell you? I want you guys to watch this clip, and I'm gonna be right back. We're gonna break this down because I'm telling you, it's wild, man.
An elephant can lift 3 tons and so forth and so on. To go beyond those capacities of the animal body, you have to make a marriage with mechanical things. So we are extending ourselves through the machines. Well, one of the things that these machines do is they're time compressors. You and I sitting here talking are operating at about 100 hertz. If we could be magically downloaded into a top-of-the-line computer, we would run at 800 megahertz. That means we could do 800 million more things in this moment than we can do when we're wearing flesh. So it may be that we will find a way to technologically stretch time, and this will become for us like a false eternity. You may have only 10 minutes left in your life, but it may be time enough to pack in all of human history from the fall of Rome to the present moment. So we are finding ways out of the three-dimensional Newtonian prism, which says, life is narrow and confined and ends at the grave. And we're doing it by becoming information that is freed from material. And somehow this allows us to make this ascent to the next dimensional modality. Information is not time and space constrained the way we are. We talk about the difficulty of moving an object at the speed of light. Our entire planetary technology cannot achieve moving a marble at the speed of light, but we can move information at the speed of light. Tetrabytes of it. We do this every day. So we see how we stand then like children at the edge of the ocean of information, and we're putting our feet in and wondering, could we swim in that? What would it be like to be wet in that? What would it be like to go into that new medium? A similar dilemma must have confronted the early amphibians as they stared at the land and said, could we leave the ocean? Could we go up into those places? Could we breathe air and actually make the transition to such a hostile and alienating environment as the land? And so these are major symmetry breaks. But in every case, the answer has been, you bet. And
Like it's my belief that there's worlds hidden in plain sight that we just can't perceive, that we just can't interact with, that possibly operate at a way higher vibratory function than we do, you know? So that even if we could somehow experience their reality, we wouldn't even know what to do. It would be like overload to the senses, right? We live in these 3 dimensions moving forward in time. That's it, right? We see this narrow band of light. We hear this very narrow spectrum of sound. We're very limited. We're like we're like blind and deaf babies, man, you know? And I believe that these UAPs, these higher intelligences, are trying to kind of bring us along, you know? Maybe they did manipulate our DNA. Maybe this is all a scripted plan, you know, a way for us to evolve. Who knows? Maybe we're them, maybe we chose to come down into this 3D slowpoke flesh and blood experience for whatever reason to evolve spiritually, maybe. I don't know. But it's an awesome question to think about. What if there's more? What if you have UAPs, these enigmatic visitors in our skies, right? They're just from realities right next to us, beyond our perception. You know, the human body is a marvel. You know, it really is. You know, if you look at the way the universe operates, everything functions at a certain way, a certain rate. The moon is just so far from the sun. If we didn't have the moon here, we probably couldn't exist on this planet. You know, the moon holds the tides together. You know, you know, like a clock kind of. It's hard to explain. Without the moon, the world would be a vastly different place. And that's not it. That's not the only thing. But there's so many other things. Like if we were just a little bit closer to the sun or a little bit further away, we wouldn't be able to exist here. Everything is like perfectly created for our survival. Almost like this is some kind of like little ant farm, for some I hate to put it like, but carefully created environment for us to live in, for us to exist in, for us to grow in. But I want to get back to this computer analogy, right? So our minds, our bodies, we operate at 10 to 100 hertz, right? We can only do a handful of processes at a time. Where a computer operates at megahertz, gigahertz, do billions of operations in the same moment, right? If we were able to merge or somehow optimize our body, our physiology, to not only experience more of our environment, but also to operate at a much higher frequency, a much higher rate, so that we were able to operate at maybe megahertz, gigahertz, right? Either inside of a digital ether or possibly manipulate our physical reality to do it here. You know, I've seen like robots, sorting apples at extreme rates of speed. Maybe we can optimize our bodies and our minds to somehow be able to do a lot more functions in a moment's time. But if we were to be able to merge with a digital ether, be able to merge with computers somehow, some supercomputer, you know, and have access to some type of, complex AI, we could live out all of human history in 10 minutes' time. Experience all the experiences from Rome till today, from Sumer till today. We could probably experience multiple different lifetimes, from different perspectives, different experiences from different people, you know. You could probably experience victims of somebody you wronged. You could experience it from their side of the experience. I believe this is where we're going. And you could do this all in a short amount of time. So like if you found out you were going to die in a year, right? But in that year you were able to experience all of human history. It would be much more than your one lifetime that you're experiencing now. And what this means is it's a time compression, right? It makes it so that time really doesn't mean as much as it does to us now. Time is relative. Time is a human construct, and we experience it linearly. With this idea of merging with a computer and being able to experience all of human history, because we're operating at gigahertz, right? Billions of operations per second or whatever, right? So all of a sudden, things that would take a million years to happen, suddenly we're able to experience it in 10 years, right? You see what I'm saying? believe that one day we're going to be able to step out of this flesh and blood 3D experience. And I believe we're close. And is it possible that maybe these NHI that are flying around, zipping around, or shutting down military bases, is it possible that maybe they're trying to help us get to this point? But the people in power are kind of cock blocked. They're trying to hold it back. It's a threat to their power. It's a threat to their control. Creates fear, right? I don't know, man. These are very, very deep questions. And I think we need to have this conversation. And the boundary of 3D reality would dissolve. I wonder if that's what happens whenever you pass on. I don't know. It's a thought. I've seen interviews with people. I've read parts of books. I really was never into the near death experiences, but I feel that now I'm probably going to get into it a little bit more. And those people that have those experiences say that reality is more real than this. And it's fascinating. It's a fascinating phenomenon. Well, what if I told you, like, if you look back at the ancient history, the yogis, the Buddhas, these people who seem to transcend physical reality through meditation, through the mind. What if I told you that the mind is not bound by time, right? It's not bound by the body. Throughout history, we'd have tales of psionics, telepathy, psychic phenomenon, um, prophecy. Is all this fiction? I don't think so. I don't think so. Like, are these psychic abilities glitches in the matrix that allow people to see future events? And you hear about this AI that the government supposedly has that can predict future outcomes. You look at Chris Bledsoe just recently, right? A couple years ago, he predicts we're going to bomb Iran and Israel and Iran is going to go at it in a conflict. And 2026 is coming. There's going to be a new awareness, new awakening on the earth. And a lot of the things that he predicted are coming to pass. And it's strange because NASA's studying him, CIA's studying him, all these government agencies are studying him. The Vatican's interested in him, studying him. What is all that about? And then he makes these predictions that come true. Has he tapped into something, right? His experiences that he speaks about, that these non-human entities take him on in this craft or whatever it was, where he was able to see to all North America. He was able to see Egypt. He was able to see the star Regulus rise above the Sphinx, which just happens to be in the constellation of Leo. The new Pope, which is supposed to be the last Pope, according to the Malachi prophecies, is named Pope Leo. Of course, Chris Bledsoe made this prediction before that Pope's name was selected, right? Israel gets into it with Iran. They call it Operation Rising Lion. Bledsoe, what's he see? Star Regulus rise above the Sphinx, which is a lion. Star Regulus is in the constellation of Leo, which is a lion. I mean, could just be all just big synchronicity, right? Could be. It is very interesting. And I think it points to something deeper. And I think these topics that we're talking about here are closely related to the experiences that he's experienced and that others have experienced. I don't know. Maybe they're not glitches in the matrix. Maybe they're clues. Maybe they're clues that consciousness itself is not local. It's not bound by space, time, or even flesh. Some people have even said that our mind operates at the quantum level, that we basically have like a little quantum computer inside our mind. We just need to tap into it. And that these yogis and these Buddhas of the past were able to do that. You know, I was listening to Jesse Michaels, and can't quite remember who exactly he was interviewing, but they were talking about this idea of like a holographic universe, right? A simulation running on some type of cosmic code, right? If reality is just information, then perhaps UAPs, psionics, and the limits of our senses are all artifacts, right? Signs that we are players in a game far stranger than we can imagine. What if the true nature of reality is hidden behind the veil, is hidden behind this door that Chris Bledsoe was speaking of? There's a door there. What if, man? Maybe this veil can only be pierced by questioning everything, right? Maybe we need to start understanding that this reality, like Matthew Brown said, is carefully constructed fiction. We're being manipulated. There's more to the picture, is what I'm telling you. And I think that if you look at reality this way, if you look at reality in this way, these things that we're talking about right here, right now, I think that all the fears that you may have in your life, that I have in my life, right, will begin to fall away. You know, these things that you didn't think you could achieve because it's just not meant for you, or whatever. All of a sudden, they become very possible because you realize that you're in control of this, right? Yeah, we may be living in this limited reality, right? With these limited senses. But at the same time, you start to realize that this is all kind of a carefully constructed illusion. We need to break out of it. And this is why these ideas are dangerous, that they might not want us to know these things. This might be the reason why they don't want to disclose, because these facts, let alone half of the country wouldn't believe it anyway. But for those of us that really locked in and really understood everything, you know, from the time compression, from the 3D reality to being stuck in these bodies, to the future of mankind possibly no longer being anything that we recognize anymore. Think of what life on Earth is going to be like 1,000 years from now. What we are going to be like 1,000 years from now, right? People, unrecognizable. It's interesting. So tonight, I invite all of you, seriously, go outside, man. You know, walk in the grass, look up at the sky. Really think about, what are these objects? What are these lights in the sky? What are these experiences that people are reporting worldwide? And how can we break free? Imagine a world where time is fluid, where consciousness is free, and where what we consider reality is only the beginning of the mystery. It's awesome, man. And if you really contemplate what I've just shared with you, I believe you can take control of your experience and you can optimize your life. Because if you look at it through the lens of what we spoke about here today, if you look at it through that lens, right, I think you'll feel liberated, in control, that you're able to tackle whatever life has to hand. Because after all, I think there's a whole lot more to it. And I don't think that death is the end. That could just be the beginning. So if you're still here with me, friends, family, no, seriously, I really appreciate you guys. You guys see that light blink back there? Anyway, I hope what I said hit home today with you guys. You know, this whole idea, seriously, if you look at it this way, because I believe we are on the cusp of evolving in ways people never even imagined. Probably about it, probably before my children become adults. I think that we're probably going to get there, and it's exciting, man. You know, and I've been doing a lot of doom and gloom episodes about 2027, 2026. So this is a really good, you know, kind of uh, a new perspective on everything, right? And I just want to thank everybody, all my new subscribers. Thank you for the likes and the shares and the comments. I really appreciate it. Um, Please, those of you that watch this channel, if you find it entertaining, if you like it, please like, subscribe, share it to somebody. It's a small channel. I'm really trying to get it off the ground. Once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I already spoke to Robert Shape through messages. I'll be doing an interview with him. He does custodian file. He catches a lot of awesome footage of UAPs, and you know, we're going to start doing interviews and really get this thing off the ground. So I appreciate all of you. I really do. Thank you for tuning in today. Um, I hope what I said here today maybe hit home with some of you guys, you know? And yeah, I'm going to keep trying to find good content, find good subjects to cover, interesting, informative, things that help people in their life, you know? As well as entertain. That's what it's about, you know? So maybe I'll do a top 10 best UAP footage or something next week. I don't know. We'll get it. We'll see. You know, it's hard when you do this every single day to keep coming up with good stuff to dig into, but there's enough out there, and I'm gonna keep doing it. You know, and just like I started this channel, you know, a lot of people, you know, they scoffed at me. You know, there's some doubters in my life. You know what I mean? And fuck them. You know what I mean? And hopefully in a good way. You know what I mean? And hopefully you can do that to the doubters in your life. Take control of your life, man. We could do this, man. And I think this is dangerous content, you know, understanding these facts about reality, understanding the carefully crafted illusion that surrounds us, that attempts to hold us back. And these elites, they know. That's why they're the elites. You know, they speak to each other through symbolism. It goes all the way back to ancient Egypt and further. And we're going to dig into all that. So thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. Till then, peace.